Hey everyone, it's Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm. Today is December 30th and we are swimming in winter tulips. So super exciting this time of year as the successions are finally starting to come in steadily. And I thought today would be a good time for me to talk about how I move my stems through the retail channel, which is primarily through a winter CSA. So I wanted to talk about this because having done a spring and a lily CSA this past season, I felt a lot more comfortable in terms of structuring and basically marketing my winter tulip CSA. So I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about one, just what were my offerings, because I have 3 different CSAs for these winter tulips. The second piece is just how did I price it? And then the third piece is what does that profitability look like per stem and ultimately per bouquet, and what that even means in terms of how I make decisions going forward. Now, if you haven't been following me, this is my main crop. I force winter tulips in my basement. I grow them hydroponically, and this season I'm growing about 10,000 tulips. So they started blooming in mid-December, and I'll have them basically through Easter, at which point then the field tulips will start coming in mid-April-ish. But I move the majority of my stems, or I hope to move the majority of these stems, through the wholesale channel, and that is through both local florists, but as well as overnight shipping to neighboring states, like along the East Coast, I would say. But then I have a small percentage that does go through retail. I do a la carte bouquets. In fact, someone who picked up their CSA bouquet now just bought another bouquet, right? So that would be an a la carte bouquet, but once in a while I do get inquiries from neighbors, especially who know that I have tulips. Hey, can I get a bunch? But for the most part, they go through a CSA. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start processing these stems as I talk about my CSA. I'm not exactly the best at multitasking here, so we'll see what happens. But before I get started with the CSA, I harvest with bulb on, and sometimes I'll even keep these in my garage, which stays at around like a 50, 55-ish degrees this time of year, overnight, or for even like up to, I would say 72 hours, no water, just bulb. They do fine. These were, however, freshly harvested, and what I like to do is just take off the bulbs all at the same time. These have fantastic stem length, so I don't need to split the bulb, but if they are short, then you can also split the bulb to get like an extra inch. What I love about hydroponic growing is look how clean this is. I didn't have to clean anything. If you've grown field-grown tulips in the spring when it is muddy, you know how much labor it is to clean those stems, and that's the best part about winter tulips, which I'll get into with the cost side, is that there's relatively minimal cost because there is little cleaning. So let's get started with my CSAs. So I had 3 CSAs. 2 of them are very similar in nature, and I started marketing them back in September. And when I say market them, I mean I put them on my Facebook page, my Instagram page, and I posted on like a local town group. So that was 6 weeks of blooms every other week with an option of delivery or pickup. So it's 6 weeks every other week because it's the winter. Tulips inherently like cooler weather, so they will stay or have a better vase life inherently because it is winter, even if people keep their houses a little bit on the warm side, like in the 70s. But the other thing is that because I'm harvesting them really so close, or I am giving them to the customer so close to harvest, I find that especially if I pick them at a stage like this or like this, people are going to get at least 7 days out of them. If not, I find on average people are getting 10 days, even off of a single like this. So doubles, I would say, have a little bit more of a longer lifespan, but for the most part, people are getting more than a week, so they want to be able to have this option of just having every other week blooms. I feel like that feels less indulgent for people, but at the same time still gives this happy feeling when they see fresh flowers come into, or when they're walking into their house. So that was 2 offerings. And the third offering was one that I put on later, which was a gift subscription. So this was 3 bouquets. I called it the Beat the Blues with January Blooms. So the first delivery actually starts tomorrow, which is December 31st, so the day before January, but it's 3 bouquets and it's included with delivery. So I wanted to do a half share and price it at a reasonable dollar amount that felt like it was giftable, so affordable for gift giving, but still also looked really good when the recipient went online and saw how much that cost, and that also made sense to me. So now let's talk about how I price these. The 6-week subscription for pickup was $125. The six bouquets for delivery was priced at $160. And then the gift subscription was priced at $84.99. I should just price at $85, but I think that there's some mental psychology aspect of having something end in like a 4.99. So I priced at $84.99, but basically it's $85. So the customer then pays tax on top of that, by the way. They are all picking up in the state of New Jersey. New Jersey has a sales tax, so they get charged sales tax on top of that, right? So I just want to make that clear. When it comes to how I value the bouquets, I am valuing each bouquet at $20. I started valuing them a little bit more for the gift subscription. The gift subscription bouquets are technically $22, but when I'm making bouquets, I'm thinking about them from a $20 value standpoint. So that gets us into now, what does that look like in terms of profitability per stem or profitability per bouquet? So in order to talk about that, we need to now talk about costs. So I am a wholesale grower. Obviously growing 10,000 stems puts me safely in the wholesale range, which means that I am buying my tulips in wholesale quantities. When you buy tulips in wholesale quantities, you are obviously getting a lower price point, but you are getting like 500 of the same variety. So they arrive in crates of 500. And this year I bought, I want to say 22 crates of 500, and then I also bought some one-offs that were in like 125 increments. So I found that Netherland Bulb Company has pretty good pricing for unchilled bulbs in 125 increments. So that's definitely something to look into if you're not at the state of buying 500 per variety. So all in all, I have over like 12,000 tulips. There's going to be about 2,000 in the field, maybe a little under 2,000, but the majority will be winter forest, right? So the cost per bulb at wholesale then is around 35 to 45 cents per bulb, including the cost of freight. I find that in order to ship a crate to me from the supplier that I buy at, which is within the Northeast, it's about $50 per crate. And so I like to get freight shipment if possible, because that definitely cuts down the cost. So to ship 19 crates, I think costs something around like $370. So, you know, it adds up per crate when you save like $15 a crate. So ultimately that got my per bulb cost down to 35 cents to 45 cents per bulb. Now that is not the only cost of your stems, right? Because now you've got labor, you've got other, whoops, the wind started blowing and so my tripod moved. But so it's not just the cost of the bulb, right? You've also got the cost of sleeves, you got the cost of labor. So the labor to grow everything, the labor to then put these into bouquets, and then the labor to even organize the CSA, all of that gets factored in. So when we think about the cost of other things, the sleeves are 25 cents each. I also do add a card that talks about vase life and all that stuff. That's a one-time card though, right? Because these people are getting bouquets consecutively, right, over the course of a couple of months. So there's a one-time cost of 15 cents. And then we also have the labor piece of it. So I did another video, which I published earlier this week. I'll link it in the description below, but it talked about me tracking every single labor-related activity for growing the tulips. And I found that overall it added about 10 to 12 cents per stem. So that's just the labor of growing. Then there's the labor of making a bouquet, which is not embedded in that 10 cents per bulb. So the good news is that when you're making bunches of winter tulips, there's not a lot of greenery out there. And I would say that winter tulips, or just straight stems of tulips, whether or not they're grown in the winter and the spring, do beautifully well in a vase without any kind of foliage or accent flowers. So what that means is that making a bouquet is really, really quick. When I time myself, it was like 10 bouquets in 12 minutes. And that includes rubber banding them, putting on the sleeves. Right now, of course, at that point, I've harvested all of them in terms of taking the bulb off, but I just took off the bulbs of all of these tulips as I was talking to you through this video, and you can see I didn't really need to do much. I literally just snipped the bulb off. I'm not even taking the leaves off, right? I find that especially if you're putting 8 in a bunch, you need the leaves to help it feel a little bit more bulky. The thing is that when you have singles like this, it doesn't look very impressive, but over time it does really open up big. I'll show you an example over here. This is this stem. So this variety is called Delta Storm, and this stem I think is like on day 7 right now, and it finally just started like opening up and it's getting really, really big, right? So I don't want the bulb to be too open, but at the same time, if it's too closed, then it feels a little bit small. So there's this like happy medium where you want the buds to just be opening up ever so slightly so that it gives the bouquet a feeling of weight and still maximizes the vase life in the customer's house. So how is that for an armload of stems, clean stems? Now, the next part, I do need to focus. So I'm going to put this on a time lapse, and afterwards, we're going to talk about what that looks like in terms of profitability per stem and per bouquet. So that was 4 bouquets in under 6 minutes, and I was talking to my husband, so I lost track of count and all this other stuff. But all this to say, making winter tulip bouquets, straight bunches, super, super easy, super fast, totally cuts down on labor costs. So let's now talk about what profitability looks like per stem. So I laid out all the costs before. I'm going to put them on the screen just so that you can see them in written form. But ultimately what this gets me down to is about $1.30 per stem of profit. So in my last video where I talked about tracking my costs and what I was aiming for in terms of profitability, I'm aiming for at least $1.15 to $1.25 per stem of profitability on the wholesale channel. Now, obviously retail channels should be a lot higher. There are a lot of people who won't put more than 8 stems in a bouquet, even if they're singles like this. I find that I guess what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to my CSA customers, I'm a lot more willing to be generous and take a hit on profitability, because these are customers who not only prepay a lot upfront, they prepaid me a lot upfront 3 months in advance. They're obviously taking a chance on me. I'm asking them to be flexible in case of I have a crop failure or I just need to be flexible on the date. And so it's a very flexible arrangement for me, but it's committed stems that I am getting out the door, right? So I've sold a total of 14 shares of those 6-week bouquets, plus another 5 shares of the gift subscription. So when you add that up, that's actually like over 1,000 stems that I've had pre-committed. So in exchange for that pre-commitment and flexibility, I'm willing to give them a little bit more. Now, when the doubles come in, when the parrots come in, we're going to see a higher profitability per stem because I'm only going to put 8, if not at most like 9 stems. But as I was saying before, some people don't go above 8 no matter what type of variety it is. And obviously they're able to maintain a much higher level of profitability. But I would say that for the retail portion of my CSA, I'm looking at a profitability per stem of anywhere from $1.30 to $1.50. And to me, that makes it worth my time, because obviously I'm not just selling it by 1 per stem, I'm selling it in a bouquet. And then every CSA week has at least, I would say, like 7 people that are picking up. So that's 7 bunches. And even with today, I've been upselling bouquets. So someone comes to pick up and they're like, wait, actually, I want another one, right? So then charge them another $20. And that's like a really easy sale because I haven't done any marketing, right? I just find that when you have a bucket of blooms for someone to pick up or to choose from, they are more likely to be incentivized to potentially want to pick up another bunch. And this has happened repeatedly through my other CSAs where people will just buy an extra bunch here or there. So now let's talk about how having this information helps me make decisions. So One of the things that I came to realization is, believe it or not, I feel like I don't have enough tulips, which is mind-blowing to me. But I've been rooting so many for Valentine's Day, and the trays have been turning over so quickly that I actually have more trays for Valentine's Day than I had thought I would have. So what that means is that I'm going through my bulbs a lot more quickly. Now, I am doing an experiment where I bought all the parrots that Netherland Bulb Company offered. So all of my later successions after Valentine's Day will be parrots. Now, if you've ever grown parrots, you know that they're prone to leaning a little bit. I feel like sometimes, for whatever reason, in my head at least, they're more susceptible to things like stem topple when you're forcing them. So I started getting a little bit uneasy thinking about, okay, really the main inventory I have is parrots. So maybe I should start diversifying them. So that got me looking into what other untreated bulbs are still available. And I'm seeing crates ranging anywhere from $165 to $195. And I would say that in the past, I would say, oh, like that variety, an extra $30 per crate, like, yeah, like I can totally make it up and go for it. But now that I'm looking at my numbers, that's like an extra 7 to 8 cents per bulb, depending on how much more that is versus $165. And so now I'm asking myself, if I'm moving them via retail, is it worth it for me to buy a more expensive bulb versus something that is reliable, like Delta Storm, right? Like this orange Delta Storm, people love it. And it is a much cheaper bulb. It has strong, sturdy stems. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So it's actually making me lean towards buying more of the singles, where realistically, even at my co-op, I can fetch a relatively high price to florists for these singles versus for something that is more specialty. Right now, I'm pricing my singles at like $1.95, $2 for florists, and then the specialty ones will be $21, $22. But here's the thing, when all the field grown crops or tulips come in from other growers, that ability to price higher definitely goes down, right? So I might be getting some of these stems at a time when people who are growing in tunnels are going to get them. So there's also that piece of it, right? So that leads me to the last part of this, which is that winter tulips are definitely a profitable crop. Tulips in the normal time of year during the spring are a different story. If you are in a part of the country where it's hard to grow winter tulips because you have a milder winter, so you don't have as much competition, that might look different. But if you are where I am, which is in a northern climate, tulips are really the only thing that people plant outside of daffodils that bloom around the early springtime. So everyone gets tulips at the same time. Last year, when I had what I call tulip hell, everything was blooming at the same time, I had to put like over a dozen tulips per bouquet minimum in order to move them at the $20 mark a la carte. I mean, they were beautiful bunches, but they were definitely not profitable. So this is why I focus the majority of my tulip growing this time of year. So anyway, I hope that this video was helpful for you in terms of understanding just how a CSA could look, how I think about pricing, and what that profitability looks like, right? Your CSA profitability and structure is going to look completely different if you're not doing winter tulips. If you're doing mixed bouquets, you're doing it throughout like the summer or through the spring, right? Like now you have a variety of crops. For me in the winter, I only have one crop. It's a tulip, right? It might be a double, it might be a parrot, it might be a single, but it's still a tulip. It's one and done. I know exactly what the costs are, which is why I love growing winter tulips, because there's this like level of clarity that is hard to find in most other crops. Now, if you want more information, I do have a Patreon post that is going to accompany this YouTube video. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about my costs per bulb by variety and all that stuff. I have a lot of Patreon articles now that accompany many of my YouTube videos, and now we have a closed or private Facebook group for more engaged conversations, but I've also been releasing quarterly, or I hope to be releasing quarterly, exclusive Patreon videos. So the last one I did was actually how to pitch to local media like your newspapers. So hopefully giving more added value for people who are supporting me financially to allow me to continue making free YouTube content. So link is below in case if you're interested in either supporting me or getting access to that kind of content. It's $5 a month. So let me know if you have any comments or questions in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button if you're not yet subscribed, and I'll see you in the next